Welcome everyone to Barrie's first live and in-person Word Up for 2021. So thanks for coming in person and thanks for coming online. We have Word Up, acknowledge that some of us are situated on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe and Huron-Wendat people. Word Up is dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. We share in the heartbreak of all those impacted by the discovery of children in unmarked graves at residential schools, giving this acknowledgement deeper significance. So tonight's panel, it's a general writers panel with our authors J.L. Witterick and our own Colleen Winter, here to discuss their most recent books. The open mic is last. We're looking forward to you sharing your work, so stick around. But first, our authors will introduce themselves. And after introductions, they can start their reading. And we'll start with J.L. Witterick.
Hi, everyone. I can't tell you how happy and pleased I am.
So Jenny, you got to stand in front of here so people online can see.
The problem is I'm so short.
Yeah.
These people
Sure,
can't see me if I stand behind there.
How's that?
They'll be like, who's talking? Anyway, I just am so thrilled to be here because I love Barrie. I have a home here and some of my friends are here. And I have to tell you, anywhere you go, I've traveled around the world, it's really the people, isn't it, that make a place. And my friends in Barrie, I'm so grateful that they're here tonight. They've made this place feel like home for me. So thank you for being here and thank all of you for being here. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I became an author because it was not a natural progression for me. And then I'd like to share with you some insights on my latest novel that are not well known. And I think that if you have questions later on, I'd love to answer them as well. I'm a pretty informal person, so that's kind of how I like to operate, okay? So I came to Canada when I was 7 years old and I couldn't speak a word of English. Now, from that background, do you think I could have possibly imagined that I would become a best-selling author? Probably not. She's shaking her head. No way, no way. Yeah, exactly. So I really am a big believer in possibilities and I try to live my life that way as well. Well, actually, can you guys hear me? Because I forget that I have a mask here. Is that better if I hold it down here? Okay, so yeah, I'm a big believer in possibilities and I live my life that way. A friend of mine said to me, I don't want to go to a fortune teller because I don't want to know how my life's going to unfold. And I have to agree with him because I want to be surprised by what I can possibly achieve that I can't even imagine at certain points in my life. I want to be surprised. So I have to agree with that. And I think that if I look back on my life, it's been that way. So how did I get from there to here? Well, my father came to Canada with $200 and an English-Chinese dictionary. That's it. So you can imagine when someone starts out in a new country without a very firm grasp of the language, they want their kids to be doctors, lawyers, or accountants. Like that's pretty much what every Asian family wants for their children. That just really take from me. And I went to business school instead, and I ended up being in the investment industry at a very good time to be in the investment industry. I was in that business for 30 years. And I don't know if you've had this happen to you in your life. Sometimes your life can make a monumental change and you don't even see it coming. So a friend of mine asked if I would like to go to see a documentary about a Polish mother and her daughter during the Second World War. And they, through courage and like being so clever, were able to save Jewish families and a German soldier who wanted to defect. Well, I walked away from that film so moved by the story that I said to myself, someone really should write a novel about what happened and honor these women because they shouldn't be forgotten. And I'm running a company at this time. We're investing all around the world. I'm flying around meeting with presidents of companies and political leaders. And one day I said to myself, well, why don't you just do it? Now, have you ever had that little voice that when you try to say, oh, when I do something that says back to you, You don't know how, you're not going to be good at it, you shouldn't even bother. That little voice is always there. And I said to myself, well, it is true. I don't know how to write a novel. I write quarterly investment reports that nobody probably reads. But I don't know how to write a novel. But here's the thing. Isn't it true that someone who's really good at something at some point in their lives didn't know how to do it? It's true, right? We're not born with the ability to do all these things that we end up doing. So if I can learn, well, you know what the fastest way to learn how to do something that's outside your area of competency? The fastest way? Fastest way is to take a look at who's really successful at what they're doing and model after them, because they figured out everything else that doesn't work. It's much faster than learning actually from a teacher or professor, because you're going directly to people who have been successful. So I started reading novels, which were best-selling novels by authors of young adult novels, because that was my target audience initially for my book. And what I did was I analyzed how they structured their story, vocabulary, pace, development of characters, things like that. And I used that information, modeled after that, but introduced my own style of telling a story. And it was a proven formula. They'd already done it and it became bestseller. So I thought, hey, this will work. And I ended up writing my novel that way. I sent it to a whole bunch of people, people in political leaders, ambassador Israel, lieutenant governor, people who won Order of Canada. And I was so thrilled that they all came back and said, I loved your novel, couldn't put it down. So I thought, this is easy peasy, I'm gonna have this published, right? Not so. Every industry has a circle around it. And if you're outside that circle, very difficult to get in. So I thought, okay, no one wants to publish this, no problem. I'll publish it myself. I believe in it. So I did, and the novel became a bestseller in Canada in 2013, I believe. And then Penguin came in and said, we'd like to buy the rights for the world. And they took it internationally in 10 languages, and it continues to sell well today. It is used in many schools to teach compassion and courage in history. And I couldn't be more thrilled. So my life changed in more than one way. I decided to give up the investment business and became a full-time writer. My employees all went to work for World Bank, which is our largest client. So I didn't want to do something unless everybody was okay and looked after, and that was managed. So then I was free to continue to write stories. And then people say to me, well, I didn't get an idea for a story. I don't think I'm a traditional writer, because I'm not like a writer in the traditional sense of someone who approached it from the viewpoint of a profession. I approach it from the viewpoint of being passionate about a story that I wanted to share. So one day I'm sleeping and I wake up in the middle of the night and there's this dream that is so compelling, so astonishing. I thought, man, I've got to record this. This is amazing. So I got my iPad out and I started, basically writing down points about this story. And then of course went back to sleep again. Now, I don't know if you've ever had a dream like that where you just go, wow, that's really something. And you go, I'm going to remember that in the morning. And you don't, right? So it was a good thing I wrote it down because I didn't remember it in the morning. But that was the basis for my second novel, It Was Always Her. And the reason why it's called It Was Always Her is because my main character is sent back in time to prevent a third world war. A third world war that is actually caused by the pandemic, indirectly as a catalyst. Now, initially, when I wrote the story, I didn't know about the pandemic. This book was supposed to be published in 2019, pre-pandemic. But the inklings of the pandemic were starting to come through. And I thought, if I write a time travel story that goes through 2020, and I don't talk about the pandemic, you might as well just take this and throw it in the garbage can, right? Like, it makes no sense. So I pulled it, and that's why the publication date says 2019. People go, well, you published in 2019, and it's just in this, it's just available now. That's the reason. So I rewrote it for the pandemic, and I rewrote it so that he goes back in time and prevents it from happening. Wouldn't that be cool if we could actually do that? So when you read the story, you go, oh, okay, I understand what happened here now. But if you look at all science fiction / romance, kind of a little bit of everything. You have to have a bit of a love triangle, right? Because boy meets girl, girl meets boy, they fall in love, there's no conflicts. It's kind of boring. So he is sent back in time to assassinate the president of the United States because he is blamed through his weak decision making for causing the Third World War, the catalyst. The problem is that when he goes to the past, he falls in love with the girl that needs to marry the president in order to prevent the World War from happening. So he has to choose between the girl he loves and the only person he will ever love, or saving the world. Now, that's a pretty tough decision. Well, most people say, well, that's an easy decision. You're talking about a world war, lots of people dying. You know, surely that's an easy decision, but it isn't when it's your life. And a lot of decisions, so there are a lot of conflicts in here in terms of, and he has a chance to warn his parents who are in the military, and I didn't know it at the time. I put in Afghanistan, who knew? I mean, did I have visions of that? No, but that was in there. And if he does that, then everything else changes because he is raised as an orphan. And because he's raised as an orphan, he's really strong and tough, and his character is very independent. And if he saves his parents, he's going to be raised differently. That won't be who he is. He won't be the one chosen to go back in the past. And the girl he loves is going to die instead. So he's got all these decisions to make that are really difficult. And he asks himself, you know, is it right to choose the person you love over a million people, faceless people that you don't know? And that's a tough question. But, you know, I asked myself, well, would I be willing to let the person I love, would I be willing to let my parents die in order to save a million people? Would I do that? And it's not as easy a decision as you think. So I think to myself, well, how am I going to tell you as the reader who this guy really is? How am I going to communicate to you how his character was built? I'm going to do a flashback, right? I'm going to tell you something that happened in his childhood, because all of us, I think, are shaped by what happens in our childhood. So let me find that for you. And
See if there's anybody who needs to come in.
okay. Okay, so here's the general. He's choosing this guy called Bruce Mayer to go back in the past. Can you hear me? This doesn't seem to be as strong as it was. Oh, because I'm holding up there. Okay, got it. I was new to this. Okay, so this is a journal speaking to Bruce Mayer. He says, when your parents died, you went to live in foster homes, correct? Yes, sir. It was the loneliest time of his life, but Bruce has learned to mask his feelings and answers as if the question were routine. Your parents married against the wishes of their family, so no one came forward to take you, the journal states matter-of-factly. Bruce clenches his fist, the only hint that it still bothers him. The memory of an incident suppressed for so many years rises to the surface. Dylan, a 12-year-old bully, yanks the pillow from 7-year-old Bruce while he is sleeping. A small photograph of Bruce and his mother falls out. Twin boys, a year younger than Bruce, wake up and gather around. Dylan is enjoying the attention and plays it up. Look at here, the baby still sleeps with his mommy. The twins know that Dylan taunts all newcomers. They should have warned Bruce. Too late now. Bruce looks up at Dylan defiantly. Give it back. The twins cringe. This won't end well. Dylan waves the photo above Bruce's head. I have to tear this up. You're too old to sleep with mommy. The twins look on, sympathetic with Bruce, but too fearful to say a word. They have at times incurred the wrath of Dylan themselves. Bruce knows what he needs to do. In a flash, he grabs the knapsack from his bed and hurls it upward at Dylan, striking him like a slingshot. Mollified by acquiescence typical of his victims, Dylan is unprepared for what is coming at him. Stunned by the painful blow, he shrieks and collapses like a rag doll, stuffed with nothing but straw. Bruce bends down to retrieve his treasured photo, which is settled beside Dylan on the floor. Now that the excitement is over, the twins return to their bunks, sneaking an adoring look at Bruce along the way. No one notices or cares that Dylan is still whimpering. Sitting on the edge of his bed, Bruce opens his knapsack and smiles at the 3 large stones inside. While the other grade 2 students on the field trip were collecting leaves by the riverbank, he found what would keep him safe. Sliding the photograph back into his pillowcase, Bruce falls asleep with the knapsack nearby. In the morning, they will move him to another home. No matter, he has the stones. Having to look out for yourself, do you think that might have shaped who you are? Would you be the same person if you had a mother who kissed that scraped knee or a father who took you camping? The general hammers out his next words, I think not. As much as Bruce wishes it were not true, the general has a point. So that tells you the kind of person Bruce is and why he became the way he was. He had to defend himself in foster homes. He had to really be, toughened up in order to survive his childhood. So, sometimes people write books with the undercurrent of an agenda. And I have to admit, I did that. And not all of you may agree with it. And I'm just going to put it out there anyway, because I feel strongly about it. But a few years ago, I can't remember exactly when, I stopped eating meat. I just felt that I didn't want to inflict that kind of cruelty. And I know it's a personal choice, and I shouldn't be saying that to anybody else. But I thought, I'm just going to write that into the book. And then maybe some people will choose to agree with me and some people won't. But I feel like I've done something that was important to me. So, I wrote that. So Rachel, the girl that he falls in love with, says, more seriously now, she reflects on her dream. You know what I would do if I were really rich? Brown lines are born between her eyes, conveying the depth of her feelings. I'd build a sanctuary for animals. With a wistful, faraway look, she continues, all they want is to live. They don't need a big TV, a faster car, or anything else, not like us. From her, Bruce learns that a mother hen will spread her wings to shield her chicks from the rain. Rabbits will pull out their fur to keep their babies warm in the winter, and pigs, playful and loving, will form lasting relationships with each other. Animals are more intelligent than we give them credit for. They have instincts to protect their young, and they experience pain and joy no differently than we do, Rachel tells him. Bruce hadn't thought much about what it means to consume meat before he met Rachel. Maybe he just didn't want to know. Cows cried for 2 weeks when their calves were taken away, she says sadly. Bruce has given up veal, but these stories cause him to do some serious soul searching. All his life, he has eaten meat, and it seemed fine. Now he finds himself troubled by it. Isn't it ironic that the word humane, compassion, and kindness towards all creatures was the original spelling for human, Rachel asked him? Bruce nods to concur. A verbal response is not required for a rhetorical question. If only he could tell her that plant-based diets are mainstream in the future. In 40 years' time, people move away from animal-based foods for a multitude of reasons. They want to reduce their carbon footprint, they want to improve their well-being, and they want to be kind. Years from now, archaeologists will discover that gladiators, the strongest and fiercest of men, were vegetarians, and athletes, the gladiators of our day, will reveal that their strength and endurance were enhanced by a plant-based diet. Now, actually, that is factual, what I just wrote later on. I don't know if you know, but Tom Brady, the Super Bowl guy, he has moved towards mostly a plant-based diet, and the only meat he eats is salmon. So it's not true that meat that you have to have it to be strong. I don't think anyway. Athletes more and more, and I think that we are starting to see that in our society. A lot of restaurants have plant-based foods now. So that's a personal thing for me, and I wrote that in. There are a few other very personal things that I wrote into the story that most people wouldn't know if they read the story. And one is that, I'll read it to you, and then you'll know what I mean. So Bruce ends up staying with Rachel and her family for Christmas because he's injured, and so he ends up staying with her. So, and it's during Christmas time. So he says, this Christmas will be the first in a long time that I feel like I belong, Bruce says quietly. Moved by his honesty, Rachel reveals a secret as well. I never liked that holiday. Bruce looks at it curiously. Doesn't everyone love Christmas? When we were little, my dad made me and my brother wrap Kleenex boxes to put under the tree. I was so ashamed. Someone even said, aren't you lucky to have so many gifts? Rachel shakes her head. I'll never make my kids do that. There's no shame in being poor or alone. Even if she hadn't emphasized the word alone, Bruce would have known it was meant for him. Why didn't anyone ever notice that all those presents were exactly the same size? You don't have to be a genius to see that. Rachel makes a face and giggles as if she just heard the funniest joke. And there it is. How did it escape him before? Children waiting eagerly at the ice cream truck. Pajamas still warm from the dryer. Flowers peeking through in the early days of spring. Her laughter is all of this and more. Clear as day, Rachel took something painful and transformed it into something silly, something inconsequential. This is what Bruce finds compelling. This is what he admires most. Negative energy flows through her, ineffective against her being, incapable of contaminating her spirit. He has never known such resilience. Loneliness, rejection, and insecurity run deep in him, veiled by a facade of self-sufficiency. What is effortless to Rachel has eluded Bruce his entire life. She's the one who makes me safe, not the other way around, he thinks to himself, because he is sent back in time to protect her, and she is killed in the fur without him coming back. So I wrote that because that's what my dad actually made us do. My brother and I used to wrap Kleenex boxes, and we didn't have a regular tree, one was like tiny little guys, like 2-footers. And the Kleenex boxes were all around that tree, so that when people came to our house, they would think that we had a lot of presents. And someone actually did say to me, oh, aren't you lucky? And I remember thinking, even as a child, you gotta be kidding, they're all the same size. Haven't you figured it out yet? I just said, yes, yeah, I sure am. And you know, I was thinking to myself that things like that happen to all of us, right? Things that happen to us that we wish they didn't happen. And perhaps the people that made us do that, maybe there was an error in judgment. My father, I don't think he had any ill intent. He just didn't want his friends to think we didn't have money. And I think to myself, if I can frame something like that in a positive way, then I'm not going to let it sap my joy or my energy or my ability to be held back by that experience. So you know what I take away from that experience? I take away that I'm going to do so well that my children will never have to do this. I will never make my children do this. And that's what I took away from it. It didn't harm me at all. And in fact, it did the opposite. It inspired me to do that. And so I think that we all have a choice in how we interpret what happens to us. We can interpret bad things, perhaps, that happen to us in a way that empowers us, or we can let it affect us negatively. And I think that if we understand that we have a choice, it might make a difference in our lives. I'm going to read you one last passage, and then I'm going to open up for questions, okay? So the last passage is kind of like how I see life today at this stage of my life. And I'm really close to getting that seniors discount at Shopper, so that gives you a hint where I am in my life. You can't see the wrinkles, because this plastic things like sort of probably reflects the light. It's great, you know? Okay, here we go. We honor our heroes with statues because somehow we believe it will immortalize them. In reality, people go about their day walking past monuments without a fleeting thought about their significance. Our lives are spent building castles in the sand, large or small, grandiose or simple. It is inconsequential, all washed away when the tide comes in. Nothing lasts, nothing endures. To love and be loved, it is the only thing that is real, the only thing that matters to me now. So that's near the end of the book. I'm not going to keep reading that because that is a spoiler alert. But I wrote that because that is truly how I feel about where I am in my life and how I see the world. I managed money for about 30 years, and it was in the billions of dollars. And we did it for pension funds, we did it for foundations, we did it for high net worth individuals. And do you think any of those people skipped a beat because we're not doing that anymore? No, there's other people that can do it just as well, if not better. So, you know, it was a great ride. It was interesting, and I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I got to experience and understand how companies operate around the world. But if I wasn't there doing it, did the world stop? Not one iota. It didn't matter. But it was, I enjoyed it at the time, and I made great friends. So much so actually that we used to manage money for the Toronto Police, and one of the guys on the board I still take out to, he's in a retirement home now, but I still take him out for lunch. So there are friendships that you develop and you maintain, but the truth is, none of us are as important as we think we are. None of us. Even great leaders, political leaders, are forgotten over time. So to me, at this point in my life, what is the most important thing? It is my friendships. It is people I love. It is spending time with all those people that make me feel like I'm connected in this world. And it is sharing my stories. Because nothing makes a writer, and I'm sure Colleen will attest to this, nothing makes a writer happier than when people tell them that they enjoyed the story that they wrote. Writing is a very personal, very intimate experience. And people don't realize that because all fiction have elements of truth in them. And the elements of truth are typically taken from that author's own personal experiences and observations of the world. So it tends to be a very personal experience. So when people say, I loved your book, you know what I hear? I hear, I love you and who you are. And so it's very moving. I receive emails from people from all over the world telling me that they enjoyed my first novel. The second one has just come out. And I can't tell you how emotional I get when I read that and how much it means to me. So if you've enjoyed the book, please feel free to do that. I have my contact on the back of the book. It's witterickbooks@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And so I just give away the books because I want people to read them. That's my primary objective. And it is my greatest wish that you will enjoy the story. And I want to thank you for our time together. How's our time looking? I don't want to take up your time. Yes, so let me pass this microphone over to Colleen. I read her bio and I have to say she's extremely impressive. I haven't met her before, but I'm just dying to hear what she has to say. Thank you.
Okay, just do a little adjustment here for taller people. So, good evening, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? So thank you so much for being here in person. And thank you to the library for hosting us. It's a great venue. I've always really loved this space, so it feels a bit important to be standing up here in front of you all. It also feels amazing to actually be here in person and to see everyone face to face. So thank you again. And welcome, of course, to those who are on Zoom. We're fortunate to be able to host Word Up both in person and online. So thanks to everybody for showing up. I'm happy to meet with other writers and readers, no matter what the format is. So hopefully we'll be able to all meet together soon in the same place. But for now, I'm going to talk a little bit about my books. So I'm currently writing a very near future thriller series. The first book, The Gatherer, which is here, came out in 2019 with Kensington Publishing Corp. And then due to the pandemic, which seems to be a very common term these days, the publication was delayed. But I'm happy to say that the second book, The Disruptors, came out in July. Now, the pitch I used to sell the original series to the publisher was, so Storm Freeman invents The Gatherer, which is a device that brings free electricity, infinite free electricity to the world. And it ushers in this era of decadence and luxury like the world has never seen, until people start getting sick, including her. And that's where the book starts. And essentially, she has to seek out and destroy what she created. Now, there's a number of reasons why I wanted to write this series. First of all, I'm electrical engineering, so this is kind of where I live my life. This is where I spend my day. But also, it's because the world of electricity is a world that's largely unknown to the general public and to the world at large. I mean, sure, if there's a, we know that electricity exists, but we don't ever really think about it until there's actually a power outage. And then we think about it for about 3 seconds, and then we go on with our lives. But there's a lot more to electricity than just that. And it's something that I'm actually really passionate about. There's too many things to keep track of up here. So the thing about electricity is that there's still aspects of electricity, and most importantly, electromagnetic fields that we actually don't understand. So even people like myself who work in the industry and physicists, they don't actually understand how electromagnetic fields work. There are theories to explain why it works that way, and they do explain kind of what happens, but there's still a little aspects of it that we don't actually understand. And there's one thing that's quite new that we definitely don't understand, and that's called electromagnetic sensitivity. Now, I know it's a big word, but don't worry, it's fairly simple to explain. So I wanted to start with electromagnetic fields. And don't worry, this isn't going to be a science lesson. We're going to get through this very quickly, but I want to just lay the groundwork for what this is. So whenever you have electricity moving from one place to another, you get current. Most of us know this. So if you have a current going from point A to point B, you're going to have current going in this direction. And there's this handy little rule that if you put your thumb in the direction that the current's going, then wherever your fingers curl, that's where the electromagnetic field's going to go. So then you're going to get a field around your wire. And and there's small electromagnetic fields, like for instance in the lights, but there's also bigger electromagnetic fields. So in the hydropower lines that distribute electricity all over the province. But what everyone needs to understand is that our entire world is filled with electromagnetic fields. So let's take a look at the library for a second. So we've got the lights, we've got the computer at the registration desk, we've got the checkout terminals, we've got the security system in the library, we've got the Wi-Fi network that fills up the whole building. So this building is filled with electromagnetic fields, and somebody with electromagnetic sensitivity couldn't actually be in this building. So let's go outside. And then there's even more EMFs out there. There's street lights, there's cell phone towers, there's Wi-Fi networks, there's electric vehicles, even regular cars. Pretty much there are electromagnetic fields everywhere you go. Now the problem is that humans are also made up of electricity. It's how we have electricity in our nerves, it's how our brain functions, and pretty much the foundation of our entire operating system of our bodies. Much the same way that it's foundation of our society. Electricity funds our computers, our appliances, our entertainment, lighting, air conditioning, the internet, more and more of our cars. And there are very few areas of our lives that are not affected by electricity. But as I said, there are things that we don't fully understand. One of those things is how our bodies, which operate on these really minute, highly sensitive bits of electricity, are affected when we are immersed in a world that is filled with devices and processes that are constantly emanating electromagnetic fields. So when I talked about a plague at the beginning, when I was describing the series, it was a plague of the people who have electromagnetic sensitivity, which are called the afflicted in the book. They're individuals who are not able to go anywhere near electricity in the fields that it produces. They can experience seizures, they get burning on their skins, they get nauseous, they get dizzy, and they get chronic health problems, and sometimes they even die. When I was doing some research for this book, there was a woman that was being interviewed, and she actually ended up dying before I was finished the book. Now, the World Health Organization doesn't believe that these fields cause us harm, but there are many people who have electromagnetic sensitivities. And for them, it's a very real thing. It is my personal opinion that we simply don't understand yet the pervasive fields that are in our world and the consequences of it. And that's why I wanted to write this book. Many sufferers have led to have to remove themselves from society, which is actually really hard to do because it's almost impossible to go anywhere where there aren't electromagnetic fields. Storm Freeman, the main character of the book, she actually goes up to the Yukon at the start of the book to try and get away from them all. But of course, because it's a thriller, she doesn't actually get to stay there. Now, I was doing some research in the book and learned that Nikola Tesla, who I'm sure you all know what a Tesla is, He tried to invent a device that drew free electricity out of the air. He didn't succeed, but I got to thinking about what would happen if he did and what the consequences might be. And that's what the gatherer is. It draws free energy out of the air, but it's also drawing energy from us, from the plants and everything around it. It really is all about the fact that everything is connected electrically. So that's one reason I wanted to write this book. And it's a bit of a long-winded explanation, but it's something that I feel very passionate about. But it's sort of as an exploration of our relationship with energy and what the consequences might be of the world if we had created something like that. And so I wanted to bring all of that stuff that's kind of in the background that kind of we don't really think about and bring it out into the forefront. But there's another reason, and that's maybe even more important, and that's that we've all made mistakes. We each regret things that we've done and may or may not have tried to fix them. So I got to thinking about if you had made a really massive mistake, like for instance, inventing a device that was wiping out the human race. You thought you were saving the world, but instead you destroy it. Now, how far would you go to fix what you had done? And what would you be willing to sacrifice in order to make it right? One of the questions that I put together for the book clubs that were reading the series was there ever a time when you had done something wrong? And was there more damage at stake other than just beyond your ego? And that above all is what this series is about. It's about two strong, whip-smart women having to fix a problem they created and up against a government that has no intention of letting this golden energy goose out of their hands. Now, The Gatherer was shortlisted for the Rakuten Kobo Emerging Writer Prize in Speculative Fiction. And I'm excited where the series has gone since then. I'm almost finished the third installment, which is called The Storm, which is coming out next spring. I'm going to read a few pages from the beginning of The Disruptors, which is the most recent book. And then if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And we'll get Jenny up here at the same time so we can both answer questions. Okay, chapter one. The porch light was out, the space beneath the canopy dark, and the glow of the moon on the house turned the windows darker. Compared to the brightness of the streets and the blazing storefronts Maria had traveled past, it was a welcome haven. And yet she would have liked to be able to see further into its shadows. She crossed the road, her face tucked into her collar, grateful for the cover of the porch. The rows of painted wood boards were neat and swept clean. A welcome mat lay at the door, and Maria wondered if she had gotten the right place. She had been watching it for over an hour, and there were no signs of life from within the dark house. A window looked out onto the porch, double hung. She could have jimmied it, but the noise would attract unwanted attention inside and out. She knocked 3 times, the door vibrating dully. It was metal that had been made to look like wood. Amanda could be watching her from inside the house even now. As kids, she had always liked to play games, usually several steps ahead of Maria and everyone else. Maria turned her head to check for movement on the street. The pools from the street lights rose up in fronts of the house on either side. She felt the door open, an awareness of space where there hadn't been any before. Look who's here. Amanda was thin and wiry, as she had always been, her black hair pushed back from her face like an afterthought. She was fully clothed in the middle of the night, as if she had been waiting. Can I come in? Amanda ignored the entirely inadequate greeting and tilted her head to the side, an invitation. Maria stepped over the threshold. A staircase led straight up against one wall, and a dim hallway ran beside it to the back of the house, the glow of a computer screen at its end. The tensions in Maria's shoulders eased as Amanda closed the door behind her chest loosening enough to allow a deeper breath. She heard 4 deadbolts slide into place and spun back. She pulled at the handle, fear flooding into that brief release of tension, certain she had walked into a trap. It didn't move. Relax, they aren't for you. Then who are they for? Maria heard the panic in her own voice, a knee-jerk reaction to her fear. Amanda's silhouette moved into the shadows of the living room. It will be getting light soon, said Amanda, her voice cool and remote, as if they were teenagers again and Maria was overreacting. You can't be out on the street anyways. Maria turned her back to the door and leaned against it, forcing herself to breathe and take stock of what was really there. Amanda sat on a high-backed couch and the red burn of a cigarette end glowed at her lips. You knew I was coming. There was a flick of her cigarette into an ashtray as Amanda leaned forward. In the spill off from the streetlight, she looked older than she should, with lines around the corner of her eyes and a mouth that aged her far beyond her 30-something years. Actually, I thought this was the last place you would come. There was a ticking sound down the hall, 4 taps, and then it stopped. Is someone here? She could imagine her unit waiting at the back of the house, knowing she would come here. Yet how could they when she had never once mentioned Amanda's name? Amanda tilted her head, exhaled smoke. It's just me. There was a challenge in her answer, defiant like she had always been, but there was also something protective, new. Mind if I check? Amanda ground out her cigarette and gestured for Maria to go ahead of her. Be my guest. The carpet was thick and deep. The dimness hid the details, but she got the feeling there was wealth here, a level of comfort and quality that came with money. The blue cast of a screen grew brighter, its glow defining the edges of a sheer, formal kitchen. Amanda hung back, watching with amusement more than trepidation. Maria could feel her calculating the changes in her, assessing who she had become. Did you kill that guy on the train? I will leave it there. So thank you. If anybody has any questions, we can go ahead. I think Jen needs to step back for a second, but she'll be here in a moment. So is there any questions online, Linda? Were you able to see? No quiet group tonight. No one ever wants to be the first. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll take a couple-minute break. Oh, do you want to have a question? Go ahead. Can you say that a bit louder? The first one took about 2.5 years, but the second one, I was under a deadline from the publisher, so it only took a year. So it was it's amazing what a deadline will do for getting stuff done. Anybody else?
How many hours a day do you write?
So I write 3 hours a day, every day, except for Sundays. First thing that I do every day is I write, use my best energy of the day for writing. And it's the best way to get it done. And then you've got your words in for the day and you can move on with other stuff. Yes, I'm a first thing in the morning writer. Every writer's different. Some people like to write late into the night, but I'm definitely not one of those people. Oh, you're late in the night. Yes.
And is there an actual volume that you want to hit, or is it this is 3 hours?
It depends on the day. My goal every day is to hit 2,000 words. Most certainly in that year when I was under deadline, I would hit 2,000 words come hell or high water. But then some days, some days the words don't come. And then you have to go off and do something else, or you just think about what's going to happen next. So it's a very fluid process, but yeah, ideally I try to hit 2,000 words when I'm writing every day. It depends on the day. Some days you can, if you're totally in the zone, you can write 2,000 words that you don't have to change at all. But other times, you're just kind of feeling your way through, trying to figure out what's going on. So it takes you a bit longer to find the right words. So many people, authors often talk about drafts. So many people go through, 8, 10, 13, 15 drafts of a novel. But the way I write is that I continually circle back. So I write a certain way and then to a certain point, and then I circle back and I keep on circling back throughout the novel. So by the time I get to the end, the book is essentially done. I maybe have to do one more draft afterwards, but by that time it's finished. And that's the thing, every writer's different. Some plot, some just like to follow the story wherever it goes. It all depends on the different kind of writer you are.
This is the first book you've written. I know these are the first 2 you've published.
Right, so I should be saying the questions for our online people, but the question was if these are the first books I've written. I wrote one manuscript before these ones that is still in my drawer somewhere that did not get published. So The Gatherer that was published was essentially the second book I had written. So I know some authors have like 15 or 20 books in their drawer, but I only had one in my drawer. Anybody else?
Take writing classes or?
Yeah, I've taken, the question was whether I'd taken writing classes or not. And the answer is yes, I've taken writing classes throughout since I've been writing for about 20 or 18 to 20 years, can't remember exactly. And I've taken courses throughout and just continually trying to improve your craft and to learn and to meet other writers and to learn about publishing. It's a very, very complex career and complex industry. So it just takes time to learn it all. Yes. Yes, feel free to come up. Does anybody have questions for Jenny?
Says, how far do you circle back when you do?
Oh, so the question was how far do I circle back when I do? It pretty much, I write a chapter and then I go back and I also work with a writing coach. So pretty much I submit all my work for every 2 weeks to my mentor. She goes over it and then we talk about it. And so then at that point, I go back and fix whatever we discussed that's not working and needs to be done, just based on her feedback.
You're a scientist, and
Yeah.
that's how scientists would work.
Right. Yeah, that's what Jenny was saying, that kind of how scientists are working. So go back and check our work and do stuff like that. Does anybody have questions for Jenny?
We could repeat some of the questions.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, here, why don't you come take the mic?
Yeah.
But stand in front of here.
Okay, yeah.
The questions for,
That's great. What? What's that?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
for writing process. So Colleen was.
Right, right.
How many other books has she written?
I see. Okay, well, I'm working on a third novel right now, which is about 90% finished. I'm really excited about that. My writing process, I'm probably as opposite to Colleen as you can get, because I just write whenever I just feel like writing, and I usually write with music. If I want to write a passage that's really moving, I listen to music that moves me, and that emotion channels through the music, and it feels like it comes into me and comes out in words. I can't explain it. I don't even feel like I wrote these 2 books. I feel like it was floating around looking for a home, and it found me as a vessel to tell the story. That's how I feel. So I can't really take credit for the stories. I mean, I wrote them, but honestly, it feels like I channeled it, especially the first novel, because I wrote that so quickly that it felt like I turned on the tap. All I did was put the pail underneath and catch the words, and I just basically just wrote it out loud. So I believe that there is something to inspiration. I believe that there is something, and they sound hokey. I believe that there is something that we can tap into if we're open-minded to possibilities, and you can bring it into yourself. So that's how I write. I can write anytime, anywhere, doesn't matter, as long as I'm not tired. Can't do anything when I'm tired. Nothing good happens when I'm tired.
Are you, one of the questions Colleen was, the hours of the day. She works full time, and she said she writes 3 hours in the morning.
Right.
Morning or nighttime writer.
Yeah. Well, she's a scientist, and I admire that. I admire people who have an organized way of doing things. That would be how I would approach the investment business when I was in it. But for me, writing just doesn't feel that way. For me, I just literally write when I really want to write. And my parents are elderly, so I make sure I spend a lot of time with them. I know there's not a lot of runway there. I want to spend time with my friends and do fun things, because I think inspiration for writing a story or inspiration has to come from experiences that you have. So the more experiences that you have, the more relevance and authenticity you can bring to your writing and your characters. So That's how I justify it anyway. I'm out having a good time. I'm out doing stuff. And then I go, yeah, I'm gonna write that into the story. I'm gonna remember how, and so when I write a story, I write that story. And then I go back and infill for little insights or little things that I think, makes that character fuller, or experiences that I've had that give you insights into who somebody is. And so I can't say I don't have a formula for doing it, but I think I write with passion, and I think I write with authenticity. I'm honest in what I say. I have a very general outline, and sometimes when I write, it kind of shows me where I'm going to go as I'm writing. And it's hard to explain, but you need a rough outline because you need to know, like, how it will begin and develop and end. But the novel I'm currently working on, I didn't know how it was going to end. Actually, I mean, I kind of had an idea how it may, but as I'm writing it, the characters kind of told me. Like when I write a story, my characters feel real to me. Like when somebody is hurt or it feels like that person actually died. Like to me, like because my characters are so real that they feel like they exist. And if you think about it, what is real and what isn't real, right? Like, I mean, people we've known in our lives who have passed away, were they real? They're not around anymore. Can you prove that they were real? They have photos or whatever, but really, what is real? So if I'm able to create a character that is so real, let's say 100 years from now, 200, 300 years from now, aliens came to Earth and they read a book of a character that was developed so well that you felt like you knew them, would that person be real to them? It would, wouldn't they? So what is real, what isn't real? I'm not quite sure when I look at it that way. And same thing, I think fiction, nonfiction is a very blurry thing. You couldn't do that in the library. It's very blurry because I think all fiction has elements of nonfiction. Like I put moments of my own personal life into the stories. I think other people do. But in nonfiction, when people write their biographies or whatever, you don't think they embellish a little bit here and there for sure. There's little elements of perhaps fiction in that too. So I think the line between fiction and nonfiction is very blurry and it's just percentages. So that's, yeah, that's how I see it.
Did you ever take Master of Fine Arts, or did you ever do any lessons? You just teach yourself?
Well, when I was in grade 13, and I'm old enough to have gone to grade 13, by the way, my English teacher said to me, you really should pursue a literary career. But at that time, my parents, we didn't have very much money. Writing, I don't know if you know, is a long shot career. I mean, you hear J.K. Rowling, Patterson, whatever, there are only a handful of people that make a lot of money from writing. And that's not why I write. I mean, great because that means that I love to read the books, but writing to me was too big a gamble in terms of financial security for my family. So I never considered it serious. I thanked him and I said, well, I really appreciate you telling me that. And he did give me a very good mark in my English class, but I didn't pursue it. And I think I'm very fortunate because I have been able to have 2 careers in my life. I've been able to have different experiences. And I've been able to write without the burden of worrying whether I can make a living from it or not, which is a tremendous privilege, I understand that. Subsequently, I did take a night course in writing, but I am not nearly as credentialed as perhaps other writers. But I think that the most important thing is to write authentically from your own personal experiences. And I'll give you one quick example of that. When I was in grade 9, my English teacher said, okay, I want you to write an essay about why weakness is a strength. So I wrote, like when it's the boat's going down, women to reverse. And if you're weak, people are going to use a threat. And people won't come after you. People used to leave babies in front of doors because, the helpless people look after that. So I wrote all that stuff. And he called me in after class, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. He said, your essay was the best essay I've ever read in my career. And I thought, wow, that's amazing, thank you. So the next essay assignment, I thought I better impress him because he's expecting so much. So I started using the encyclopedia, I quote it here, I quote it there. It wasn't me that wrote this essay, it was a whole bunch of different people that I thought I would impress him. And I got, for me, it was devastating, got a B, because I'm always like this type driven, you know, the A plus plus, I'm not happy. And I was devastated, got a B. And he goes, you know, it didn't feel like it was your voice. You were just right out, and you know, it was well written, but it didn't have any soul to it. And I learned from that experience. I never forgot. That was grade 9. I'm far from grade 9. I never forgot that. That it is, and that's the advice I give writers, it is the most important thing to be yourself and to write from what you observe in the world, in your life, and all around you, because no one else has those experiences except you. If you write that way, your work will be unique. And that's what I did and continue to do.
I have a question from Bruce Manson to both of us. What do you find are the best 2 ways to promote your book?
Okay, well, I'm really fortunate because my latest book will be carried at all the retailers, Shoppers Drug Mart, Walmart, Loblaws, the airport, and obviously all the, you know, Amazon and all those things. So I'm very fortunate that way. Promoting a book is difficult. I mean, social media, I think, is the most powerful vehicle today, and I'm not good in social media. Fortunately, I have friends who are younger who are good at that, and they're helping me out. We also have some ads going on in the subways in Toronto and in the SkyTrain in Vancouver. That just through some people I know as well. So we're fortunate about that, but it's difficult to do. I think social media is the best way I would recommend.
I sort of have a bit of a different perspective on that. I've sort of gone the social media route and done a lot of online stuff. And inevitably, I think it's about finding where your readers are. So if you're, depending on what you write, like, I mean, if you write science fiction like I do, then you need to find where your readers are. And there are a lot of science fiction people are online. But in terms of promotion, the best place that I've ever found, bar none, in terms of selling books is actually in events like this. It's face to face. When you're actually meeting people, you're talking about your books, and you're getting to meet people in person. I found that's always been the best place to get your book out there. I mean, it's definitely hard during the pandemic, but hopefully that'll start to change. But I don't find, sorry to disagree with you, I don't find social media to be effective at all in selling books. I think it's great in promoting your brand. I think it's great in, you know, networking with other writers. And I think it's great to, you know, establishing you in the writing community. But in terms of actually selling books, I think you need to go where your readers are, and you need to connect with your readers. So that would be my thought on that. Any other questions? Okay. Do you want to come and finish up for us? Okay. Linda will be back in 1 second.
Thank you, Colleen. Normally we have an open mic at this stage where people can come and share about their work for about 5 minutes. Is anyone here interested in doing that? We do. We have an open micer. Come on up. And I have a feeling, Frank, online, you've got some music for us? Is that a yeah? Okay.
I've got something as well.
Okay, good.
Will you actually hear it, though, this way?
I'm going to turn my iPad around and
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I think we've got a nice intimate group. So yeah, they should
That's
be able to hear it.
cool. You're
So-
magical.
Yeah, we're trying. So we're going to do our live and in-person people first, because they're brave enough to come here, put their masks on, and then we'll do you guys, okay? So, and please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kiana Scott, but I go by the name Ivy Rose for my poetry. I'm going to be reading a few poems from my book, Life in Black and White. I swore I'd never write about you, because you were never worthy of my words, my lips, of me.
Can we start over with the mic closer to your voice? Yeah, I can't. It's not coming across here.
Okay, I'll start over.
Yeah, just stand a little closer.
Oh, to this.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
I'm not sure.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, the other women came through very very clearly, so I'm not sure what's went changed. But
I'll try to speak up.
okay.
My name's Candace Scott. I go by the name Ivy Rose for my poetry, and I'll be reading some poems from my self-published book, Life in Black and White. I swore I'd never write about you because you were never worthy of my words, my lips, of me. 17, just 17 words is all I could write, just 17 words so hard to love. Kisses, kisses on every inch of your skin, invisible, transparent, warm kisses embedded on your broken soul. And still, my kisses appear in the moonlight. Our story just had to be told. He tasted of tobacco and bad decisions, smelled like sex on the kitchen table. He was temporary love, but she didn't care. She loved every bit of him. He felt the pearls around her neck and whispered sweet little lies, ones that taste bitter and smooth like the whiskey on his tongue. Morning sleeps with you were my favorite. My dainty legs tangled and entwined in yours, the smell of soft rose and lavender left on your shirt from the night before. I whisper softly, make love to me again. And every time you wear that shirt, every time you smell flowers, every time you think of love, you think of me. And in that moment, you knew it didn't matter whose legs yours were tangled and entwined with. You'd always picture me naked in your sheets. Giving you time, giving you love, giving you me, all of me, it was never enough. I hated the thought, and I never liked to admit it. But love meant a lot of things, but love mostly meant you. My eyes full of anger over and over. You leave, I heal, you come back. Why? Haven't you done enough, stole enough? Haven't you broken enough of me? Why are you not satisfied? Because I'm whole without you and you're empty without me? The mask keeps coming off. I admit it. Loving me takes a lot because I've never been loved the right way. Loving me was anything but right. It was lots of uncertainties, never stability. It was broken promises kept behind closed doors, and it was lies and lots of whiskey lips. Never sweetness and soft roses. I admit it. Loving me takes a lot because I've never been loved the right way. But love me the right way because, damn it, I'm worth it. Thank you.
That was beautiful. The book was beautiful too. So we will have to get links so people can buy the book and we'll put them on our Facebook page afterwards. All right. Is there anyone else here with anything to share? No. Okay, so we're gonna have some fun. I'm going to turn around my iPad, which is down here. And who wants to go first, Bruce or Frank? Frank's pointing at Bruce and Bruce pointing at Frank. Okay, I say Frank goes first. Just give me a minute. My glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. Well, I was going to try and mute you because the last time we had us both on, we were doing some weird sound things, but it won't mute. Maybe because you're the host. Okay, Frank.
Okay. This is something I made up a few weeks ago. It's to a common public domain tune, but the words are, of course, mine. It's about writing. Here we go. Writing all day, writing all night, writing all day, yeah, writing all that night. One more, writing all that day, writing all every night. Here we go. A 1, 2, 2, 1. Oh, I'm not there, but anyway, maybe you can hear me. 1, 2, 2, 1. Writing all day, writing all night. Putting words to screen, not paper. Writing all day, writing all night. Putting words to screen, not paper. This ain't no paper caper. Hey, pray the editor my words do take. Wi-Fi and all I do make. Ah, pray this night my words do bite. Getting in that editor's sight. Making everything all right, right, right. Hey. Writing all day, writing all night, putting words to screen, not paper. Writing all day, writing all night, putting words to screen, not paper. This ain't no paper caper. When I make a mistake, I don't need an eraser to take. I just press delete without missing a beat. Oh, I'm getting hungry. Time to eat. Writing all day, writing all night, putting words to screen, not paper. Writing all day, writing all night, putting words to screen, not paper. Writing all day, writing all night, putting words to screen, not a paper. There we go.
Thanks, Frank. You always make me smile.
Aw, thanks.
Okay, Bruce, you have to go next now. Did we lose you, Bruce? Okay, unmute yourself and give her.
There we go. Okay, I'm not going to try and sing my story. You wouldn't want to hear that. We're going to read an excerpt from a YA novella that I'm currently putting the finishing touches on. It's called Double Cross. It's about 3 kids, Matt, his twin sister, Ashley, and their best friend, Sadia. And they head off for a 4-day-long weekend to visit Sadia's aunt in Manitoba. During this trip, there's an explosion that happens in the woods. They go down and take a look, and in the rubble, they find a very old cross dating back to the 1600s, a metal or ornament sort of cross. They go back the next day to see what else they might find, and they find somebody's dug a hole, and it's an entrance to a cave. So they go in to explore, and this is an excerpt from chapter 8 called Middle Earth. And the narrator is, the protagonist is Matt. The tunnel took a slight bend. Without warning, the walls splayed outwards. I stopped and swept the flashlight from side to side, taking several slow steps into the large underground chamber. We stood, one in front of the other, and stared. The rough walls, covered with a film of water, shimmered like dark mirrors. I inched towards the center. The sound of our breathing filled the cavity like ghostly heartbeats. I moved the beam of light up the layered and jagged interior. The sides appeared to shift and twist under the moving glow. I scanned the cavern ceiling. Sadie leaned into me, her unexpected contact sending chills across my back. She extended her arm into the shadows. Stalactites, very cool. I looked them more fully, tracing their icicle shapes, and then followed droplets of water from their tips down into a black pool. I directed the beam deeper across the inky surface. Rocks appeared out of the dark, growing into ragged, rocky cones, stretching upwards, their counterparts, suspended from the ceiling. With their cream color and their tapered, irregular surface, it wasn't hard to imagine a set of giant, weathered teeth waiting to clamp down and chew up anything that tried to pass between or through them, to swallow what remained into the darkness. Sadie sighed, her voice an almost inaudible whisper, drifting still softer as she spoke. Amazing, so beautiful, so harsh. Listen to the drops counting off time. I wonder how many drops and how many thousands of years it took to create this. My shoulders drooped, relaxing, making me aware of how tense I'd become. Chuck's magic show voice came to mind. I was in Middle Earth, waiting for Gollum to appear, waiting for the ring, or maybe the cross. Ashley shrieked. Startled, I spun. What? Sadia crashed into my side, knocking me over. I went down hard. My body rammed the rocky floor. The side of my face smacked against stone. My cheeks stung like it had been stabbed. The impact triggered a shrill ringing in my right ear. At the same time, my elbow hammered the ground. Tingling pain tasered my fingers and shoulder. The flashlight flew from my hand. With a crack, it went out. Sadia slammed down on top of me, pinning my arm beneath my chest, squeezing out what little air was left in my lungs. From the corner of my eye, I glimpsed a ball of light jump and skitter behind us. A crunch. The chamber plunged into darkness. A barely audible whisper that sounded like, damn kids. Was I hearing things? A dim glow. Footsteps? Again, total darkness. Total disorientation. Ash, was that you? Muffled, whimpering, and panting. Sadia twitched on top of me. I tried to move, the electricity still racing up my arm. Fed by staccato breaths, my lungs sucked in some air, but only enough for me to squeak. Is everyone all right? I pulled in more air. Ashley, where are you? Her response vibrated with fear. There's someone else in here. He shoved me from behind. I fell into Sadia and knocked her over. I can't see anything. I tried to sound strong. Whoever it was is gone. My body trembled inside and out. Sadia? Shook up, but fine, I think. You? Her voice was low. My arm got smashed. My face is hurting. I touched my cheek. No blood. She shifted her weight. As soon as Ashley can get up or can move, I'll get off you. I waited, shuddering. I'd never experienced total blackness. I couldn't see my hand a centimeter in front of my eyes. This is what blindness must be like. This is what being buried alive must be like. I swallowed hard. My thoughts whirled. Fear, pain, guilt fought for dominance, wrenching my stomach. Fingers of panic crawled up my throat, trying to choke me. My brain raced, wouldn't focus. We're not getting out of here. My arm's broken. No, it isn't. Then it's paralyzed. I'm paralyzed. I can't be. Prove it. Move. What if I can't? Stay here. Lay here until someone comes. Like someone could find us in here. No one is coming. No one is coming. I forced a deep breath, clenched my fists, pinched and reopened my eyes. Nothing. Blackness. Emptiness. It's the end of the excerpt, but not the chapter.
Linda, you're muted. It's okay. Maybe you didn't want us to hear you.
That explains it. I'm trying to figure out why my sound isn't working.
Yeah, I tried reading her lips, but I didn't want to repeat it. So,
Okay, can you hear me now?
yes, thanks a lot.
That, I remember that commercial with the "Can you hear me now?" It's a whole new meaning to that now. So I was just thanking everyone for coming to our little experiment tonight with the live and in person and Zoom. Our first live in person. So the next word up is October 14th. We are looking at doing something fun because it's October and it's Halloween. So I've got some interest from a sci-fi and horror author named Gemma Files. She's got some really cool kind of paranormal books and a few others. It's interesting, a little different booking because we don't know if we're going to be live in person next month. So make sure you pay attention to wordupbarrie.com. Sign up for our newsletter so you'll be the first person to, or one of the first people to find out what we're up to next. And we're also on Facebook. We're pretty active on Facebook, where we try to be. And we also have, next week, we have performance skills for writers workshop. We have an instructor named Deborah Joy, who is a voice coach and veteran professional actor, singer and director. She works at the University of Toronto as a teacher and from York University. She, as a voice coach, she recently worked on the popular TV series The Handmaid's Tale. I'm probably sure you've heard of it. And Star Trek Discovery. She's been teaching voice in the George Brown College Theatre School in Toronto since 1998. And before, she headed the voice department at the University of Windsor. So she's got a great resume, and she came with fantastic references from students. So you can come develop vocal confidence and presence, discover what makes compelling reading, and hone your vocal skills, all so that you can shine in the world as an author. I know myself, I started Word Up 6.5 years ago with a few fellow authors who had a really hard time getting on stage, because we like to hide out in our rooms at home and do the writing, but getting on stage and sharing our work is a whole different art form. So I'm really looking forward to this. So that is also on our website, wordupbarrie.com. And there are, I think, 3 spots left so that you can have your work critiqued. Beyond that, you can still join in and gain from watching other people's work get critiqued. And that closes us off. We want to thank Rhubarb Media for hosting our website, checkenergy.ca for Zoom hosting, and the Barrie Library here for hosting us giving us a mic and all this cool podium and seats and everything. So thanks, everybody, and thank you.
Thanks a lot, you guys.
We're now official Witterickers.